Hello, I'm Super Orange Cat here. I'm today covering my review of episode 3 of Housing Complex C. Now, there is a lot to unpack in this episode, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with things I liked and then go on to things I didn't like so much about this episode and then tie it up with a big old fat Super Orange Cat bow at the end. Now, something I liked about this episode is it definitely moved faster than the first two episodes. First two episodes came really just more about a prodding, slow pace. I get it, and that was to build up the tension, which to a degree, I think Housing Complex C did a decent job of. And especially when you get to the end of this episode, too, it finally felt like they remembered, oh, there's only like 30 something minutes left of content. We kind of have to start tying things up or speeding towards the climax here. And that's something I do appreciate. It really didn't do the whole let's slowly go for 3 whole episodes and then randomly do stuff for 20 minutes then call it a day at the end of next week's episode. As you might know, because next week is the finale of Housing Complex C, and even considering this, here's something I didn't like as much, it still feels like there's a lot to do. Even if you go full speed, I don't know if you could cover all you need to kind of cover and address in 22 minutes from what you've set up so far. But again, they do have some interesting things left up in the air, which could result in good things. I'm just struggling to see if they're going to do a good job in what you would say is sticking the landing here. Like, for example, might as well, because you've probably watched it, and if you haven't watched it, just watch it because I'm going to spoil some things. At the end of this episode, first off, I called that Kimi was weird, and there's something really messed up with Kimi, because you finally see who her quote-unquote mommy is. If you remember the first 3 episodes, you would occasionally see her in, like, the hallway of her apartment with the light turned off, and she'd be like, okay, mommy, or something. I'll see you later, mommy, when she goes out to talk to Khan or Yuri or the old guy whose name that escapes me, who more or less died in this episode. And you finally see it, and it's this weird plant, ficus, moss, fetus inside a flower vase thing. It sounds weird, but if you watch the episode, you know exactly what I'm talking about here, and it is exactly as weird as you'd expect it. People like, oh, it's something Junji Ito would do. This doesn't remind me of Junji Ito as much as maybe, say, David Lynch. Like, this, something wouldn't fit in with, say, Uzumaki, in my opinion, but it would definitely fit in the universe as something more surreal or more just uncanny, like Eraserhead, in my opinion. And although that sounds exciting, there's not so much outside that so far that's pointed there. We do get a clip in the promo for the next episode where Yuri's dad goes bananas, tries to kill Kimi, and then Yuri stops him briefly, which goes further to another thing I predicted where there's something messed up with Yuri's father. You don't see much of him. And the entire time we see him, he's like on his phone. He's the reason why all the fishermen are there, the interns, and he's on his phone. We don't know much about his character outside of he's Yuri's father, and he sometimes talks to Yuri, and that's really all we see of him. And you also see Yuri's mother, and she seems on edge. And although you could be like, oh, she's on edge because she wants this to work, and she partially blames herself for the interns and the natives of Kurosaki not getting along, it does kind of seem like she knows something. And she can't bring herself to tell anyone, but she knows something dark is about to happen. And that's the impression I get from her character. And Yuri, to a degree, too, feels like she might be hiding something herself. And it ties along to this whole prophecy that last episode, the second episode, talked a bit about, and they kept on talking about this episode, where you see this prophecy where, oh, there's this priestess and her protector, and all these fish people sacrifice themselves, and the fish people sacrifice themselves supposed to represent, like, the piles of fish. And then you have Khan, who seems to know something because it's like, oh, I do move the piles of fish to protect Kimi. Even though at this point, you would have no reason to know why this is protecting Kimi. And that helps the show. The show definitely builds some stuff, and they are starting to kind of connect the pieces a bit. Although I think it's kind of lame that it's very transparently gonna be, oh, it's just reliving the exact events from so long ago in this prophecy, but like in 2022, the modern, which we have confirmations happening in 22. First, Yuri and Khan have iPhones, and the fact that one of the collars and tags that Khan finds in the tunnels shows the year 2022 on it, and him reacting like, oh, this is very recently. or something like that. And another thing about Kimi I thought was interesting was when she goes into the tunnel and she sees this weird prophecy along with Yuri. When Yuri goes back in the tunnel, Kimi briefly says thank you or goodbye to the old guy who she sees the moss. So she knows the moss somehow means that he's dead. She knows, and that's something that you wouldn't think that she would know if she was just, oh, a normal, innocent 9-year-old girl in some rural old person community, you know? And like I said, I called it. I called that she's messed up. I called so far that Yuri's dad's behind something. And I called that to this point, it looks like the interns really have absolutely nothing to do with the story, especially being villains. Although they do try to kind of connect the fishmen in the old Japanese poem to the interns indirectly, and they're trying to play it off that way. And I'm going to make one prediction here for the final episode. And this is what I think is going to be the ultimate final twist. Right now, it looks like Kimi is kind of messed in the head, but she's this like princess of yore, or connected to this like priestess who is the one I'm actually showing this picture here. This is actually a picture from the very first episode, the very beginning, where you see a woman sacrifice herself for the priestess when she's under attack from an opposing army. And by the way, that being said, I fully expect Yuri to die in this episode because it's clearly setting her up to be that character, especially since she's shown herself to be very protective of Kimi. Or if she's behind something, her plan involves keeping Kimi protected up until this point, because that seems to be her number one priority more than anything else. Outside of talking about, well, school starts tomorrow, school starts tomorrow. And my final bold prediction is they're going to show you this whole thing, and it's going to be totally like in the very first episode, where it's like, oh, this poor innocent Princess Kimi, she's going to get hunted by the interns who are possessed by Yuri's dad or something, and Yuri's going to sacrifice herself, and it's going to be this whole big thing. And then the twist is going to be that, like, the people of Kurosaki or Kimi are the ultimate villains, and they're starting to take over, and that the interns and the people of yore who are hunting her down were actually the good guys the entire time. And the only people who seem privy to any degree of this is Khan, and more specifically, Yubel, who is like the leader of the interns who just went out in the woods and was like, well, damn. It's like, he just went out in the woods and was like, yeah, something messed up is going on. I'll be back soon. And we don't know what that means. We'll probably see him in some capacity in the last episode. So it's interesting to see how they tie it up. I think there is a possibility Housing Complex C ties it up very, very well. There's a real chance for that. And I think the pieces are there. The question is how they all fit. Like, you have this obvious prophecy with Kimi connecting to all this stuff that happened that you see in the first episode. Yet again, you had the other clip from the first episode where Kimi and Yuri are being chased by Khan, and then Yuri's dad kills Khan. And they framed it in such a way to be like, oh, Khan's killing the poor innocent girls, he's the bad guy. And oh, Kimi, Yuri, and the dad, they're the good people. But it would be such a thing to do, and kind of a trope, like almost M. Night Shyamalan tier, where it ends where it's like, oh, see, we're context to believe he's the bad guy, but he's the good guy hunting down the villain, and the villains kill him. That would be such a thing to do in the end here, and honestly, that's what I'm fully expecting. I'm like 5 for 5 in these predictions with Housing Complex C so far. I'm on fire. So that's probably what's going to happen, I guess. I could be wrong. We could have a Fena Pirate Princess like situation where you have these pieces you could totally put together, but you put them together in the weirdest, most nonsensical, and most existential way that it kind of turns to shit. Same thing also with what am I thinking of? The last episode of season 2 of Tokyo Ghoul, where you have, yeah, we're coming to the conclusion. Let's make everything super artsy and very hard to decipher, or something like that, which I think universally was hated. I'm gonna get the one person in my comment section who said Tokyo Ghoul ended in the best note possible, but whatever. But what do you guys think? If I had to rate this episode, I'll say it's a step up from last week's episode. I would give it a 7 out of 10. What do you guys think? Leave your comments, leave your opinions down below. I am the Super Orange Cat, and that is all.